this guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Le Comité pour la sécurité.
Mr. Speaker, the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians has indicated that members of this House purposely helped hostile foreign actors. Canadians have a right to know who and what the information was.
The committee indicates there are members of this House that have knowingly worked for foreign hostile governments. Canadians have a right to know who and what is the information. Who are they?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition knows very well that no government, including the government of which he was a member, is going to discuss particularities of intelligence information publicly, so he knows better than that. But the good news, Mr. Speaker, is if he wanted to get the appropriate security clearance and be able to see the confidential report of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, he would be much more informed than he is now, and we would invite him to do so he wouldn't stand up and cast aspersions on the floor of the House of Commons without any information whatsoever.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we don't need secrets and confidentiality. That's what got us into this problem in the first place. What we need are the facts so that Canadians can judge. Just like in the case of the Green Slush Fund, the Auditor General revealed $123 million of spending that broke the rules, $59 million of projects that never should have been awarded money at all, $76 million in money gone to companies connected to the Liberal appointed members, including $217,000 to the chair of the fund that was giving out the money. Will the government support our common sense plan to hand over all this information to the RCMP for a police investigation?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is no surprise that today the Conservatives don't want to talk about the economy. But we know that the economy is the issue that most concerns Canadians.
Right.
And that is why I am so glad to share some great news. Today, the Bank of Canada lowered interest rates.
Yay!
Canada is the first country in G7 where the rates have gone down, and it is thanks to our economically responsible fiscal plan. Our plan is working.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
After 9 years of this Prime Minister, with the support of the Bloc Québécois, Montreal is in a state of chaos, crime, drugs, and disorder. Children need police escorts to go to preschool. So will this government accept the Conservative demand to refuse the exemption to the criminal code in order to prevent supervised injection sites from opening next to preschools and schools? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, it's not surprising that the Conservative leader does not want to discuss the economy. But we know that the economy is the issue that Canadians care about the most. And that is why I'm so happy to share a piece of good news, which is that today the Bank of Canada lowered the benchmark interest rate.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
And interest rates remain 20 times higher they were when that member promised that they would go down. Remember when she said the big risk was deflation and low rates? Well, she was exactly wrong then, and she's even more wrong now. Mr. Speaker, 6 years ago, I said there was a carbon tax cover-up. The government wouldn't reveal the true cost of its carbon tax. Then they published information claiming everyone was better off. Now we find out that there is a secret report showing that with the economic costs considered, the vast majority of Canadians are paying more. Will the government end the gag order, stop the carbon tax cover-up, and release the report?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
You know, Mr. Speaker, it is just really sad and shameful that the Conservatives continue to talk down the Canadian economy and that they are unable to celebrate our great country. But the reality is, Mr. Speaker, this has been a great week for Canada. Yes. First, the Oilers made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. And then today, the Bank of Canada lowered interest rates. Canada's on a roll, Mr. Speaker. Our plan is working.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Speaker, the government has put the parliamentary budget officer under a gag order. In fact, I have a copy of the gag order right here, and it says, this is a letter from the Environment Minister to the parliamentary budget officer. The department is providing information that is unpublished. As such, I request you to ensure that this information is used for your office's internal purposes only and is not published or further distributed. They don't want Canadians to know the true cost of the carbon tax. Why won't they end the gag order, stop the carbon tax cover-up, and release this report today?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the person who seems to be laboring under a gag order is the Conservative leader. And that gag order seems to prevent him from saying anything positive about our amazing country. The fact is, today is a day of really good news. The Bank of Canada has lowered interest rates. Canada is the first G7 country to lower rates. Our government's economically responsible plan has created the conditions that made that possible.
L'Honorable Député de la Prairie.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie.
L'Honorable Député de la Prairie.
The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, foreign interference is spreading its tendrils right into this House. The National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians has confirmed that MPs have been working under foreign influence right at the heart of our democracy. The committee has to keep things secret, but political parties don't, and they certainly need to take action. Please, spare us the list of what the government has already done against interference, because we know it hasn't worked. What will the government do now? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for La Prairie for his question and his involvement not only in the Commission, but I'd also like to thank his party and our other partners for the important work that's being done today. For example, to support Bill C-70 to strengthen our national security institutions and our collective capacity to recognize and fight foreign interference. So I'd like to thank him for that. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, this is important. The parties need to rise above the fray, because among us there may be members who, knowingly or not, are working for other countries. That is extremely serious. I'm calling upon the Prime Minister and calling on all of the leaders of the opposition parties. If someone among us is under foreign influence rather than representing their fellow citizens, they don't belong here and should leave. What will the government do to make sure that happens? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I find it a little surprising that even the Bloc Québécois doesn't want to talk about the economy. Because I know that for Quebecers as well, the economy is the main issue. And today we have a piece of good news, which is that the Bank of Canada has decided to lower the key interest rate. That's good for Quebec. It's good for all of Canada.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
The allegation that there are MPs knowingly working for foreign governments to undermine our democracy is deeply serious. That's why I've requested a classified briefing to get more information. But the Prime Minister's known about this since March and has done nothing. And the Conservative leader doesn't even want to know what's going on, has refused this information. Why are these two leaders turning away, looking away from foreign interference when it serves them?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I thank our colleague, the Leader of the NDP, for his important work and the work of his House Leader in setting up, for example, the commission led by Justice Hugg. I'm very pleased to hear, Mr. Speaker, that he's interested, having received obviously the appropriate security clearance, to get all of the confidential information that's behind the important work of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. Our government created that committee. We appreciate its work. We value its recommendations. We have always acted to put in place strengthened measures when we receive thoughtful analysis, like we did from the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, and we'll continue to do that important work.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Known since March and has done nothing. Les allégations que
These allegations that MPs may have received assistance from a foreign government, that is very troubling, and the Prime Minister has known about this since March 22nd, but has done nothing. And as for the Conservative leader, he doesn't even want to hear about it. Why are these two leaders content with closing their eyes to the reality? Perhaps it's because they think foreign interference favors their chances to win. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I thought that the NDP shared our concerns about the cost of living. And that's why it's very surprising to me that the NDP doesn't want to talk about the Canadian economy. Because the reality, Mr. Speaker, is that today we have good news. The Bank of Canada has decided to lower the key interest rate. And that's thanks to our accountable economic plan.
The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the UNSECOP report makes clear the Prime Minister was advised back in 2018 of the national security threats against Parliament from hostile foreign states. He was advised that measures in place at the time were not sufficient. He was advised to take further action. 3 times, the senior civil service asked for his approval for action to protect Parliament in December 2019, in December 2020, and again in February 2022. 3 times the Prime Minister withheld that approval. Why?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I think our honourable colleague knows very well that our government was the first government to put in place a series of measures to strengthen our institutions and our democracy from the threat of foreign interference. He knows very well that that threat was identified publicly in 2013 in a CSIS report when the Leader of the Opposition was responsible for democratic institutions, and they did absolutely nothing, Mr. Speaker. So I find it somewhat ironic that my friend would stand in his place and say that our government, the first government to act in this important area and continue to strengthen these measures, hasn't done enough.
The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the report reveals that parliamentarians, including members of this House, knowingly and wittingly assisted a hostile foreign state in Parliament and in our elections to the detriment of the people of Canada. This is shocking. And Mr. Speaker, I can't believe the following needs to be said. Parliamentarians' duty is not to a foreign state, but to the people of Canada. Simple question. Will the Prime Minister release the names of these parliamentarians?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety and Democratic Institutions.
Monsieur le Président, mon collègue sait...
Mr. Speaker, we all know that no responsible government would reveal names under these types of confidential circumstances. So it's simply not true that a government that cares about Canada's security and our institutions would do such a thing. I am very pleased that there are parliamentarians in this House who have the right security clearance to get all the information that underlies the NCCOP report. I would invite my colleagues to read that report properly. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable.